The orbital defense platform Valthara's shield died screaming across 17 frequencies. Captain Rex Vorthak watched through the command deck's crystalline viewport as humanity's newest weapon carved through the hegemony's most advanced fortress like a heated blade through frost silk. The human vessel, impossibly small compared to the kilometer-long dreadnoughts surrounding it, moved with predatory grace, its hull scarred black from countless battles, yet somehow more terrifying for its wounds. "Impossible," whispered navigation. Officer Yiln Kreshar, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "The shield has deflectors rated for solar flare impacts. How can their primitive kinetic weapons—" The human ship fired again. Not the elegant plasma streams or photon cascades that civilized species employed, but crude metal projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. The shield's secondary reactor core erupted in a bloom of superheated gas and twisted metal. Vorthak's mandibles clicked nervously. 3 cycles ago, the galactic hegemony had made first contact with these bipedal mammals from the 3rd planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The humans had seemed weak, no natural armor, no telepathic abilities, no energy manipulation organs. Their ships were primitive constructs of metal and ceramic, their weapons laughably antiquated projectile systems. The hegemony had offered them the standard choice given to all newcomer species: submit to integration and enjoy the protection of civilization or face subjugation. Most species chose integration. A few required persuasion. None had ever chosen war. "Sir," Communications Officer Zeph Morndal's voice cracked across the bridge, "the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm, almost conversational, with an accent that somehow made every word sound like a promise of violence. "Hegemony Command Vessel Eternal Dominion. This is Admiral Kestra Ironright of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. You have 3 minutes to withdraw from this system before we demonstrate why humans don't make idle threats." Vorthak's secondary hearts fluttered. 3 minutes? The arrogance was stunning. His dreadnought alone carried enough firepower to glass a small moon, and he commanded a fleet of 37 vessels. The humans had brought, what, 12 ships? 15? "Admiral Ironright," Vorthak responded, letting his voice carry the authority of 3,000 years of hegemony dominance. "You are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now, and your species will be granted favorable terms of integration." Laughter. Actual laughter echoed across the bridge. "Captain, you misunderstand our position. We didn't come here to surrender. We came here to teach." On the tactical display, the human ships began to move. Not in the elegant formation patterns, taught in every military academy across the galaxy, but in something far more disturbing: a coordinated dance of violence that spoke of countless battles, endless adaptation, and a terrible familiarity with death. The first human torpedo hit the heavy cruiser Majestic Retribution amidships. But this wasn't the clean destruction of energy weapons. This was something far worse. A chain reaction that tore through the ship's superstructure like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. "Fusion cascading warheads," whispered Tactical Officer Helen Vrixis, her voice barely audible. "They're using their own reactors as weapons." As if summoned by her words, 3 more human ships opened fire simultaneously. Not with the measured, efficient strikes of civilized warfare, but with the relentless brutality of species that had learned war in gravity wells, where every battle was life or death, and mercy was a luxury none could afford. The hegemony was about to learn why humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing their own kind, and why steel and fire were gifts they shared without mercy. Admiral Kestra Ironright watched the hegemony fleet's formation dissolve into chaos, with the detached interest of a surgeon observing cellular mitosis. From the bridge of the TCDF Prometheus Unbound, she could see the alien vessels struggling to adapt to human tactics, and failing spectacularly. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Commander Virak Stormhold, his scarred hands dancing across the tactical interface. The retribution is breaking apart. Estimate full structural collapse in 90 seconds. Confirmed, added Weapons Officer Naya Voidcaller. Fusion cascade is spreading through their primary hull. Their damage control teams are attempting to vent atmosphere, but they don't understand containment protocols for cascading reactions. Kestra nodded grimly. 300 years of interplanetary warfare had taught humanity lessons the galaxy wasn't prepared for. While other species had developed clean, efficient weapons for their sterile conflicts, humans had learned to turn everything into a weapon: their ships, their reactors, even their dying breaths. The hegemony dreadnought. Eternal Dominion launched a spread of plasma torpedoes, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering that could boil away a city block. They moved with the grace of guided poetry, their targeting systems sophisticated beyond human understanding, which made it almost tragic how easily human countermeasures destroyed them. Chaff deployed, reported Defensive Coordinator Thane Ashwright. Magnetic resonance scramblers are disrupting their guidance systems. The plasma torpedoes, suddenly blinded, careened into empty space or detonated harmlessly against clouds of metallic particles. Simple solutions. Crude solutions, but effective ones developed through centuries of fighting enemies who would use any advantage to survive. Captain Vorthak's voice crackled across the communication channels again, this time with less confidence. "Human vessels, cease your attack." "We can negotiate." "No negotiations," Kestra interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of 10 billion human souls who had learned that in the void between stars, only strength mattered. "You came to our worlds. You threatened our colonies. You demanded our submission." She paused, watching another hegemony cruiser list helplessly as its reactor core went critical. "Now you learn why we've never submitted to anyone." The human fleet advanced in perfect synchronization, not the parade ground precision of ceremonial formations, but the fluid coordination of pack hunters who had learned to trust each other with their lives. Each ship covered its wingman's approach. Each captain anticipated their admiral's intentions. Each crew member understood their role in the greater symphony of destruction. Prometheus Unbound fired its primary batteries, not at the enemy's shields or weapons, but at seemingly random points along their hulls. The hegemony officers probably thought the humans were missing their targets. They were wrong. "Structural analysis complete," reported Chief Engineer Corvin Brightforge from deep within the ship's bowels. Those hull impacts were precisely calculated. Each shot weakened specific stress points. When their ships maneuver under full power, as if summoned by his words, 3 hegemony vessels attempted evasive maneuvers simultaneously. The G-forces that their crews could easily withstand became critical failure points when applied to hulls pre-weakened by human fire. Metal screamed across the void as ships tore themselves apart simply by trying to escape. "This is how humans fight," Kestra said softly, though she knew her words were being broadcast across all frequencies. "We don't just defeat our enemies. We study them, we learn their weaknesses, we turn their strengths against them." Another pause as a hegemony destroyer's magazine detonated in a chain reaction that consumed 2 escort frigates. "And we never, ever stop adapting." The remaining hegemony ships began to retreat, their proud formations collapsing into desperate flight. But Admiral Ironright had studied human history. She knew what happened when predators showed their backs to the pack. "All ships," she commanded, "pursue and engage. No survivors." Captain Rex Vorthak's remaining ships fled through the outer asteroid belt, their once proud formations reduced to a panicked rout. Behind them, the human fleet followed with the patient persistence of scavengers, picking off stragglers with surgical precision. "Sir," gasped Navigation Officer Yiln Kreshar, her voice tight with barely controlled terror. "The humans are hurting us. They're not just pursuing. They're driving us toward the gas giant's gravity well." Vorthak stared at the tactical display with growing horror. The human ships weren't moving to intercept or surround. They were positioning themselves like sheepdogs, using careful applications of force to guide the hegemony fleet exactly where they wanted them. It was a level of strategic thinking that suggested these aliens understood three-dimensional warfare in ways the hegemony had never encountered. "How many times have they done this?" he whispered. The answer came from an unexpected source. The human admiral's voice filled the bridge again, but this time it carried an almost educational tone. "You're wondering about our tactics, Captain Vorthak. Let me enlighten you." The communication channel filled with data, star charts, battle records, casualty reports, thousands of engagements spanning centuries of human conflict. Brother against brother, nation against nation, world against world. A species that had spent millennia learning every possible way to kill efficiently. Earth, Admiral Ironwright continued, never knew peace. For our entire recorded history, someone somewhere was fighting someone else. We learned warfare not as a tool of expansion, but as a condition of existence. The data stream showed human armies adapting to every environment: vacuum, high-gravity worlds, gas giant atmospheres, the event horizons of black holes. While your people were building monuments to their civilization, humans were perfecting the art of destroying monuments. A new horror dawned on Vorthak. The hegemony had been treating this like a standard integration conflict, a brief display of superior force, followed by negotiated surrender. But humans weren't thinking in terms of integration at all. They were thinking in terms of extinction. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as human fighters, too small for conventional targeting systems, swarmed around its hull like metallic insects. Each one carried warheads designed not to penetrate armor, but to blind sensors, jam communications, and sever control linkages. Within minutes, Vorthak's mighty dreadnought was reduced to a flying tomb, its crew trapped inside their own ship. Boarding. "Pods inbound," reported Tactical Officer Helen Vrixis, her voice barely a whisper. The humans didn't board ships to capture them. They boarded them to learn from them. Every piece of hegemony technology, every tactical database, every cultural reference that might provide insight into their enemy's psychology, all of it would be analyzed, cataloged, and weaponized. "Captain." Vorthak's personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The face that appeared on the screen was unmistakably human. Pale skin, binary-focused eyes, and that disturbing absence of natural armor that had initially made the species seem so vulnerable. But there was something in those eyes that made Vorthak's blood chill. "Captain," the human said in accented but fluent hegemonic standard, "I am Major Dax Grimheart of the Terran Intelligence Division. In approximately 12 minutes, my teams will have complete access to your ship's databases. We will learn your fleet deployments, your supply routes, your production capabilities, and the locations of every hegemony world." Vorthak's mandibles clicked frantically. "You cannot mean to attack civilian populations. Even humans must have some concept of honor." Honor. Major Grimheart's expression never changed, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "Captain, your species offered my people slavery or death. You've made your choice about honor." He paused, consulting a handheld device. "I should mention, we've been monitoring your communications with Hegemony Command. They've already written off your fleet as an acceptable loss and are preparing to launch punitive strikes against human colonial worlds." The communication ended. Minutes later, as human soldiers moved through the corridors of his ship with the efficiency of seasoned predators, Captain Vorthak realized the terrible truth. The hegemony hadn't just underestimated human military capability. They had fundamentally misunderstood what kind of species they were dealing with. Humans didn't fight wars to win territory or resources. They fought wars to ensure no one could ever threaten them again. The hegemony high. Council chamber fell silent as the holographic display showed the complete destruction of Battle Group Vorthak. 63 ships, 12,000 crew members, 400 years of accumulated military experience, gone in less than 6 hours. Supreme. Chancellor Kex Valdoran's crystalline carapace shifted through deep purples, a color that hadn't been seen in the chamber for 3 centuries. Around the circular table, representatives of 47 species struggled to process what they were witnessing. "This cannot be accurate," declared war leader Nesh Corvelthis, her 6 arms gesturing dismissively at the tactical recordings. 12 primitive vessels against our finest battle group? The data must be corrupted. General Yux Thornwright, one of the few hegemony officers who had actually studied human military doctrine, stood slowly. His ancient form, scarred from conflicts across a dozen star systems, commanded immediate attention. "The data is accurate, war leader. I've been analyzing human combat patterns since first contact. They don't fight like us." "Enlighten us," Chancellor Valdoran commanded, his voice resonating through harmonic frequencies that demanded absolute attention. Thornwright activated his personal data projector, filling the chamber with statistical analyses that made several council members recoil. "Human warfare operates on principles we've forgotten. They call it total war, the complete mobilization of a society's resources toward the absolute destruction of their enemies." The holographic displays showed human industrial capacity, entire star systems converted into weapon manufactories, asteroid belts stripped and reformed into ammunition, gas giants harvested for fuel. It was industrial warfare on a scale that the hegemony, with its careful resource management and sustainable development policies, had never imagined. "But surely," interjected Science Counselor Rem Vioxen, "their primitive metallurgy limits their production capabilities?" Thornwright's laugh was bitter. "Primitive? Counselor, humans have been working with metal for 8,000 years. They've developed alloys we didn't know were possible. Their crude steel is often superior to our crystalline composites because they design it to fail in specific, controllable ways." New data streams showed human ships deliberately allowing their hulls to be breached, then using the escaping atmosphere as reaction mass for emergency maneuvers. Fusion reactors designed to overload and take enemy vessels with them. Weapons that were expected to destroy themselves after firing because replacements were already being manufactured. "They build everything to be expendable," Thornwright continued, "because they build so much of it. While we craft individual masterpieces, they mass-produce adequate solutions and overwhelm through sheer volume." Chancellor Valdoran's carapace shifted to deep red, the color of impending violence. "Then we mobilize the full might of the hegemony. Every world, every fleet, every resource. We will crush them through superior numbers." "With respect, Chancellor," Thornwright replied quietly, "they're counting on that." The chamber fell silent. "Explain," Valdoran commanded. "Humans have fought this war before, Chancellor, not against us, but against themselves. They call them world wars, conflicts that consumed entire species across multiple planets. They learned that when facing overwhelming odds, the key isn't to match enemy numbers." Thornwright paused, his scarred features grim. "It's to make the cost of victory too high to bear." New tactical displays showed human defensive strategies, automated weapon platforms seeded throughout asteroid fields, entire planets rigged to self-destruct rather than be captured, civilian populations trained and equipped for guerrilla warfare that could continue for generations. "Every human world we conquer will cost us a fleet," Thornwright said. "Every system we occupy will require permanent garrison forces that they'll systematically destroy through sabotage and terrorism. They don't need to defeat us in open battle. They just need to make governing them more expensive than leaving them alone." War leader Corvelthis slammed her primary fist against the council table. "Then what do you suggest? That we simply ignore their defiance?" Thornwright's expression was that of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. I suggest, war leader, that we prepared to lose a war we started 3 cycles ago when we offered them terms they were never going to accept. The chamber erupted in arguments, with representatives shouting in 17 different languages. But Chancellor Valderan remained silent, his carapace cycling through colors that spoke of deep thought and deeper fear. Because in the tactical recordings of Battle Group Vorthak's destruction, he had seen something that chilled his ancient soul. The humans hadn't just defeated a hegemony fleet. They had done it while learning, adapting, improving. And somewhere in the depths of human space, factories were already producing better weapons based on everything they had discovered about hegemony technology. The war was barely a week old, and the hegemony was already losing. Admiral Kestra Ironwright stood in the command center of Titan Station, humanity's newest military installation built inside the hollowed-out remains of Saturn's largest moon. Around her, holographic displays showed the strategic situation across 17 star systems, and the picture was both better and worse than she had hoped. "Intelligence summary, Major Grimhart," she commanded. Dax Grimhart stepped forward, his pale features illuminated by the blue glow of tactical screens. "Admiral, our acquisition of hegemony naval databases has given us complete intelligence on their fleet dispositions, supply routes, and industrial capacity." He paused, manipulating the display to show a 3-dimensional map of hegemony space. "The good news is that they're even more dependent on centralized logistics than we initially estimated. And the bad news? They have approximately 40,000 warships distributed across 230 star systems with production capacity that dwarfs our own by a factor of nearly 50 to 1. Silence filled the command center, even the most optimistic. Human strategists had known the numbers would be daunting, but seeing them displayed with mathematical precision was sobering. "However," Grimhart continued, "their technological and tactical doctrine has remained essentially unchanged for over a millennium. They've fought 7 integration wars in the past 3 centuries, and each one followed the same pattern. Overwhelming force applied against inferior opponents who surrendered within months. They've never faced an opponent who fought back," observed Fleet Coordinator Virak Stormhold, his scarred hands tracing patterns across his control interface. "More importantly, they've never faced an opponent who learned during combat." Admiral Ironwright activated her personal command channel, connecting to every human military installation across known space. "All stations, this is Admiral Ironwright. Begin implementation Omega." The response was immediate. From the asteroid mining platforms of the Belt to the ice harvesters of the Kuiper installations, humanity's industrial base shifted into full war production. But this wasn't the measured mobilization of traditional warfare. This was something far more ambitious. "Admiral," reported Chief Engineer Corvin Brightforge from his position deep within Titan Station's core, "the fabrication arrays are operating beyond rated capacity. We're producing hulls faster than we can install weapon systems." "Then produce more weapon systems," Ironwright replied. "And if we run out of rare elements, start harvesting them from enemy wrecks." The genius of human military doctrine wasn't just their willingness to accept casualties. It was their ability to turn every defeat into intelligence, every loss into improvement, every dead ship into raw materials for the next generation of weapons. While the hegemony built magnificent vessels designed to last centuries, humans built adequate vessels designed to kill efficiently and be easily replaced. "Ma'am," interrupted Communications Officer Naya Voidcaller, "we're receiving multiple reports from our deep space reconnaissance assets. The hegemony is mobilizing everything. 5 major battle fleets are converging on our outer colonies." Ironwright studied the tactical displays with the cold calculation of someone who had learned strategy in the asteroid wars, where every decision meant the difference between survival and extinction. "How long until they reach the Proxima system?" 17 days, ma'am. "More than enough time. She turned to address the command staff. Gentlemen, ladies, the hegemony is about to learn the difference between conquest and extermination. The holographic displays shifted to show human defensive preparations around Proxima Centauri. What the hegemony would find there wouldn't be a traditional fleet engagement. Instead, they would encounter something unprecedented in galactic warfare. An entire star system converted into a weapon, automated defense platforms constructed from harvested asteroids, gravitational mines that could destabilize a ship's trajectory from light minutes away, fusion charges embedded in every significant mass in the system, ready to deny the enemy any strategic resource. The hegemony fights wars to acquire territory, Ironright said quietly. We fight wars to ensure our enemies can never threaten us again. She paused, watching as production statistics scrolled across her personal display. When they arrive at Proxima, they'll find that we've turned their numerical advantage into a liability, because humans had learned something during their long centuries of internal warfare. The side with the most to lose was usually the side that lost, and the hegemony, with their carefully maintained civilization spanning hundreds of worlds, had everything to lose, while humanity, tempered by generations of struggle in the void, had already lost everything that could be taken from them, except their willingness to fight. The war was about to enter its second phase, and the hegemony still didn't understand what kind of enemy they were facing. The hegemony armada that emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 215 capital ships, 3,000 escort vessels, and 1 million support craft carrying the combined might of 47 species united under hegemony rule. Supreme Admiral Kex Drovaran, aboard the massive command ship Inevitable Destiny, surveyed his fleet with satisfaction. No single system had ever withstood such overwhelming force. The humans would surrender within hours or be reduced to radioactive debris. Admiral, reported his tactical coordinator, sensors indicate approximately 200 human vessels in the system. Standard defensive formation around the primary colony world. 200 against 8,000, Drovaran mused. Perhaps we should offer them one final opportunity to surrender. He never got the chance. The first indication that something was wrong came when his lead destroyers simply disappeared. Not destroyed in visible explosions, but consumed by what the sensors registered as localized gravitational anomalies. Space itself seemed to twist around the hegemony vessels, crushing them into dense matter before dissipating back to normal. "Report!" Drovaran commanded. "Gravitational mines, Admiral," his science officer replied, her voice tight with disbelief. "The humans have weaponized localized space-time distortions. They've seeded the entire system approach with them." As if responding to his words, 3 more heavy cruisers vanished into pocket singularities that appeared and disappeared faster than conventional sensors could track. The humans weren't just defending their system. They had turned the fundamental forces of physics into weapons. "All vessels, alter course to approach Vector 77 Mark IV, Drovaran ordered. "Sir," his navigation officer interrupted, "that vector takes us through the asteroid belt. Then we'll blast our way through it." But the asteroids weren't just obstacles. They were weapons platforms. As the hegemony fleet approached, chunks of rock that sensors had dismissed as navigational hazards suddenly erupted with fusion fire. Each asteroid contained automated weapon systems, fusion reactors, and enough ammunition to engage multiple capital ships. Worse, they were networked. When one platform was destroyed, its neighbors immediately analyzed the attack that had killed it and adjusted their defensive protocols accordingly. The hegemony found themselves fighting an enemy that learned from every death and became stronger with each engagement. "Impossible," whispered War Coordinator Veshnal Thorin as her display showed human tactics adapting in real time. "How can automated systems improvise strategy?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Kestra Ironright's voice filled The bridge of every hegemony vessel simultaneously broadcast on frequencies that bypassed all their security protocols. Supreme Admiral Drovarin. Her voice was conversational, almost friendly. Welcome to Proxima Centauri. I trust you're enjoying our hospitality? Human, Drovarin snarled. You cannot hope to stand against the full might of the hegemony. Surrender, now, and your deaths will be swift. Laughter. That same terrible human laughter that had haunted hegemony nightmares since the first engagement. Admiral, you misunderstand our position. You haven't come here to conquer us. You've come here to...
D.
The tactical displays changed, showing the true scope of human preparations. Every planet in the system was armed. Every moon had been converted into a fortress. Every significant asteroid carried weapons that made conventional naval artillery look like children's toys. But most terrifying of all were the ships themselves. The 200 human vessels weren't trying to win a traditional engagement. They were working in coordination with the system's defenses to create a killing field where hegemony numerical superiority became meaningless. You see, Admiral Ironright continued, while your people were building monuments to your civilization, we were learning a simple truth. In the void between stars, only two things matter: how much damage you can inflict and how much damage you can survive. As if summoned by her words, the human fleet began its attack. Not the measured, efficient strikes of civilized warfare, but something far more disturbing, a coordinated assault, designed not just to destroy enemy vessels, but to harvest their technology, analyze their weaknesses, and broadcast the intelligence to every human ship in real time. Supreme Admiral Drovarin watched his magnificent armada die with growing horror. Not in glorious battle, but in systematic dissection by an enemy that treated war not as conquest, but as evolution. All vessels, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of species-wide desperation, implement Directive Omega, destroy the primary colony world. If we cannot claim it, we ensure the humans cannot keep it. Sir, his weapons coordinator replied quietly. Directive Omega requires unanimous consent from all fleet commanders. As Drovarin looked around his bridge, he saw something that chilled his soul: doubt. For the first time in hegemony history, their officers were questioning orders, because in the tactical recordings of the human defense, they had seen something that made them reconsider everything they thought they knew about warfare. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to ensure that anyone who threatened them would cease to exist. 6 months after the battle of Proxima Centauri, Supreme Chancellor Kex Valderan stood alone in the ruins of the Hegemony High Council chamber. Through the shattered crystalline walls, he could see the smoke rising from what had once been the greatest city in galactic civilization. The humans hadn't come as conquerors. They had come as teachers. Steel and fire were humanity's gifts to the galaxy. Admiral Ironright had broadcast on all frequencies as human fleets emerged from hyperspace above every major hegemony world simultaneously, and we share them without mercy. But the lesson they taught wasn't about superior firepower or advanced tactics. It was something far more fundamental: the difference between a species that fought for territory and a species that fought for survival. Valderan's personal communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared was unmistakably human. Admiral Kestra Ironright, her scarred features calm as she delivered humanity's final ultimatum from the bridge of the Prometheus Unbound. Chancellor. Valdoran, she said simply, the hegemony is finished. Valdoran's carapace shifted through the deep blacks of defeat. Around him, the chamber was empty, his fellow council members either dead, fled, or busy negotiating separate surrenders with human occupation forces. Admiral, surely there can be terms. No terms, Ironright interrupted. You offered my species slavery or death. We chose to give those options back to you. The holographic display activated, showing the strategic situation across hegemony space. It was worse than Valderin had imagined, not just military defeat, but systematic dismantlement. Human forces weren't occupying worlds, they were liberating them. Species that had been integrated into the hegemony centuries ago were declaring independence, armed with human weapons and protected by human guarantees. "You don't understand," Valdorin said desperately. "The hegemony has maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years. Without central authority, the galaxy will descend into chaos." "Perhaps," Ironright replied. "But it will be chaos, where no one species can threaten to enslave another." She paused, consulting data that scrolled across her personal display. "We've analyzed your integration protocols, Chancellor. 743 species forced into submission, billions of sentient beings reduced to servitude, all justified by your definition of peace." Valderin's reply was the desperate plea of a dying order. "But the stability, the advancement, the culture we've created, built on the bones of free civilizations," Ironright cut him off. "We've seen your cultural records, Chancellor. Every species you integrated had their own art, their own science, their own dreams of what they might become. You took that from them." The communication channel filled with new data. Liberation records from across hegemony space. Species rediscovering their own languages, rebuilding their own governments, developing technologies that the hegemony had suppressed for centuries in the name of stability. "The galaxy is learning to be free again," Ironright continued. "And humanity will ensure that no one ever has the power to take that freedom away." Valderin realized with growing horror that the humans weren't interested in replacing the hegemony with their own empire. They were systematically ensuring that no galactic empire could ever exist again. Every species liberated was given defensive technology. Every world freed was granted membership in a loose confederation that explicitly prohibited the kind of centralized control the hegemony had wielded. "This is madness," he whispered. "Without unity, the galaxy will fragment into endless warfare." "Probably," Ironright agreed. "But it will be warfare between equals, not the systematic subjugation of the weak by the strong." Her expression softened slightly. "Chancellor, humanity learned long ago that peace built on oppression isn't peace at all. It's just delayed violence." The transmission began to fade, but Ironright's final words echoed through the ruined chamber with the weight of historical inevitability. "The age of galactic empires is over. We've made sure of that. And if anyone anywhere ever tries to build another one—" She paused, her scarred features set in an expression of absolute resolve. "Well, they'll discover that steel and fire aren't the only gifts humanity learned to share without mercy." The communication ended. Chancellor Valderin sat alone in the ruins of 3,000 years of civilization, finally understanding the terrible lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. They hadn't just defeated the hegemony, they had made it impossible for any species to ever repeat the hegemony's mistakes. Because somewhere in the depths of human space, factories continued to produce weapons, shipyards continued to build vessels, and a species that had learned warfare as a condition of existence continued to stand guard against anyone who might threaten the freedom they had died to secure. The galaxy was free, and humanity would kill anyone who tried to change that. In the end, that was the most human gift of all. The promise that freedom, once given, would be defended without mercy, without compromise, and without end. Steel and fire were humanity's gifts to the galaxy, and they had shared them perfectly.